It is Tuesday, our last week, and I feel like everyone's running on vapors. I'm so tired, but you literally can't stop. You're just gonna keep going.
My final week studying at the Florence Classical Arts Academy was packed full of very long days, late nights, squeezing in a few last portraits and trying to soak in as much of the Italian atmosphere as I possibly could. If you're new here, I'm Carly Renée, a visual artist from Australia, and I picked up my entire life and moved to Italy for 4 months to deepen my skills in figure drawing and painting. In this series, The Everyday Life of a Full-Time Artist, I bring you along with me into what the creative life actually looks like, the learning, the growth, and the very real challenges along the way. In my final week at the Florence Classical Arts Academy, I started one last portrait to complete the requirements of my course. So I began this portrait with a grisaille underpainting in burnt umber. After the block-in, my professor noted that I had placed the head slightly too low on the canvas, so I had to painstakingly adjust the entire outline to create a more harmonious composition. As frustrating as it was, the correction made the portrait so much stronger. Composition is surprisingly very easy to get wrong, especially in the early stages when your brain is juggling proportions, gesture, likeness, lighting, and basically everything at once. I agonized over the placement for so long and I didn't quite nail it on the first attempt, but this was the perfect reminder that even when you're trying your absolute best, you can still make wrong decisions and it's almost never too late to fix them. It is annoying to go back, but it's always worth it. I have never painted this skin tone before. It's a deep, rich, warm brown, and it's absolutely beautiful. My professor helped me to mix a combination of cadmium red light, raw sienna, burnt umber, and Naples yellow. Colors I rarely ever reach for, but once I started building the portrait, the harmony made perfect sense. One of the biggest shifts in my approach to colour was swapping out titanium white for Naples yellow when mixing skin tones. This genuinely transformed my portraits. Titanium white tends to bleach out other pigments, leaving flesh looking chalky or cold, but Naples yellow lifts the value while keeping the warmth and vibrancy intact. Cadmium red warms it while raw sienna balances, and together they create the most natural glowing tones. And this ended up being my strongest artwork from the entire 7-month program. I've had a lot of questions about which course I did, and I was physically at the school for 3 months, but I completed 4 months of training before arriving, and this was called the hybrid program. I have mentioned it in previous videos that the hybrid model didn't really suit my learning style, but it might actually work well for you. So if you're considering studying art in Florence, it is something to look into. Most of us at the Florence Classical Arts Academy bought our art supplies from Ragazzi, the art store right next to the Duomo, and the people who work there are some of the kindest people you'll ever meet. The store just celebrated its 100-year anniversary, and walking inside honestly feels like stepping back in time. Every shelf, drawer, and paint-stained countertop feels like it's absorbed decades of artists passing through. This store carried both student-grade oil paints and the more expensive Rembrandt oils. I chose Rembrandt because their pigments were a little bit richer and the color range felt more intuitive. The difference between these two brands was really shocking to me. Burnt umber should be a warm, earthy brown. From that experience alone, I would say that if you're painting seriously, it's always worth paying a little bit more for quality pigments.
I have been putting my bike in my building at the bottom, and I think someone's getting very upset. And luckily I lock it to the wheel so it's hard to take. This is the second time I've found my bike out on the street. Got out this morning and I thought that it had been stolen. Bringing my own ceramic cup to the cafe because I hate drinking out of plastic. This is our local cafe bakery. This is how I have to carry a cup with no handle. Wow.
During our drawing classes, a lot of my classmates and professors commented on the softness of my pencil shading and the smooth transitions in my graphite portraits. And the way I do this is by staying in the lighter grades for as long as possible, only really moving into darker pencils like 8B at the very, very end. When I first started drawing portraits years ago, I jumped straight in with a 4B or a 6B for instant results. But in my experience with portraiture, patience is really everything. Once the outline and block in were set, I'd sharpen my pencil so about 2 centimeters of lead was exposed. Then I'd use the side of the pencil to shade across the portrait with a H pencil. This prevents any harsh lines and stops the pencil from indenting the paper. I'd cross-hatch the entire base layer, slowly eliminating all of the white paper. At first, it actually feels like nothing's happening, but as the layers build, the form begins to emerge. Once that foundation is established, I'd step up the pencil grades gradually, then use an eraser at the very end to lift the highlights and bring the portrait to life. A big principle that the Academy drilled into us was the art of proper cross-hatching, holding the pencil at the very back, using your whole arm to shade, stepping back often, and never letting it be seen where your pencil marks begin and end. Each line should melt into the next, and you really shouldn't see gaps, just seamless tone.
Very energetic girl. Why? It's age. Lower, even lower. Yes. Feel free. Critic intro. It's better to give.
For our live model portrait, I toned my paper by wetting it and brushing a charcoal and acrylic sienna wash across the surface. I actually really love working over toned paper. It adds a lot of atmosphere and saves so much time. Once I was done wetting and stretching the paper, I then left the board outside to dry in the sun, and when I wasn't noticing, the sky opened up and rain covered the entire left-hand side of the toned paper. It then left these organic, unpredictable patterns, and I actually really loved the effect and decided to make it part of the composition. Professor Vitali actually really loved the effect as well and encouraged me to use the abstraction strategically, though he actually did warn me that the eye is easily distracted by unusual textures, so constructing the portrait amid these patterns would be an additional challenge. Another massive day. I only have 2 more days of school. I feel like my artworks are finally coming together.
singing again? Okay. Someone? Happy birthday, Vitaly.
As I look back on my time studying in Florence, I am filled with so much love and gratitude, especially for all the beautiful people that I met during my stay. I feel like when you go through something really intense like this, alongside people who are going through the same thing, it really bonds you together. And looking back on all of this footage makes me smile and makes me feel so grateful for each and every person that I met. And a lot of the staff actually said when we had each of our assessments that this year was a really talented year, and I felt that honestly. Everyone in my class was so incredibly talented, and I just had the greatest respect for all of the students and how hard they worked, and also how kind everyone was. I feel like we all were looking out for each other, lifting each other up, and always encouraging each other. Some of the students that were a little bit more confident in the fundamentals were constantly going around and helping the other students who weren't quite grasping it, and we were always giving feedback and positive encouragement to each other. So it was honestly just such a beautiful environment, and I feel like we all went through something really profound together. Towards the end of my stay, I did some shopping for some sentimental items to bring home. I found an incredible little store right by the Duomo that sells hand-bound leather journals made by a collective of Florentine artisan leather workers. I found this beautiful diary with a removable leather cover that fits any A5 notebook. When I fill one book, I can slip a new one inside while keeping the same leather cover forever. It has the emblem of Florence embossed on the front, and it feels like a piece of the city I get to take with me, and it will be with me for a lot of journeys to come.
The famous panini. I got the roasted pork, sun-dried tomatoes, and spicy sauce.
Another thing that's really interesting for me is looking back on all of this footage in hindsight and understanding what an incredible experience this was. And I feel like I appreciate it more as a memory rather than in the moment. I was feeling really overwhelmed and just exhausted. But now since I've gotten back, I feel like I have so much energy, and I've been going through this footage and just really understanding what I went through. And it really is so special for me to have done this and to have had these memories and to have had this experience, and I am really glad that I filmed a lot of it. A lot of my trip and my classes I actually didn't film either. When I'm working on the paintings, it does take a lot of energy to film it, so that's why sometimes you'll see an artwork skip a really big stage in the video. This experience was a really good mix between filming it and remembering this experience, documenting the highs and the lows, and then also being really present and immersing myself in the artworks, and I'm just really grateful for the whole experience. Looking back on my self-portrait, I wasn't fully happy with it in the end, but I did enjoy the process. The overall expression ended up looking a little sad. I always feel like portrait painting reveals everything. Micro expressions that feel invisible in a photo suddenly become so loud when painted into a portrait. In the reference photo, I thought I looked really strong, looking out towards the future. I started by using a monochromatic palette inspired by Lloyd's master copy of Anders Zorn. I then worked alla prima in thick layers, painting wet into wet, and then glazed over dry sections later to add a hint of colour. There really is no correct order in art. Schools teach processes, but ultimately what matters is what works for you. And if I were being strict about rules, we'd all start with the background anyway, which is exactly what I did here, because the background needs to sit back in space before the foreground can come forward. I generally feel like working back to front is best practice for me anyway, and then I work around the canvas and then work into the really important areas, and that's just what works for me. As I worked through this final portrait, I enjoyed the process more than any other painting I did in Florence. The deep reds, warm yellows, rich browns, colours I'd never used in this way. This portrait has so much character, and this is the beginning of a new chapter in my work, and I'm so excited to see what the future holds for my new artworks.
Now her eye is darker than her hair.
La schiena, la faccia,
Facial front, so it has two sides.
faccia, no?
A
Hanno
few different planes.
dire che qua c'è questa linea così. вот эту грань и боковой частью
We
рани.
need to place this
Вот эту.
plane here. I'll be finishing this artwork and the other artworks you've seen in this video in the next video, where I wrap up my final week at art school in Florence. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I appreciate you more than you know. If you're enjoying this content, please leave me a comment and tell me what you'd like to see more of. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. My plate.